This is election coverage, General Election 2025. I'm about to interview Ravi Philemon, who is the Secretary General of the Red Dot United Political Party. Hi, Ravi.
Viswa.
Thank you for agreeing to this interview.
Sure, happy to.
Okay. Very quickly, when did you start your political career? Active political career?
I would like to think as soon as I came back from the US in 2008 or 2009, where I accidentally ventured into writing for the Online Citizen and became its chief editor. And then one thing leads to another, and here I am now.
So, one of the things that people have observed is that in 5 years since you entered politics in 2015, when you actually contested in the 2015 general election, you actually changed parties 4 times.
Right.
I mean, in 2015, you contested against Amy Kaur, Dr. Amy Kaur, and you lost. But actually, before that, you were in Singapore People's Party, SPP, where you were vying for the position of Secretary General, and you didn't get elected. You left the party, and then you joined. You joined which party when you contested in the 2015?
Well, it was like all this is like accident, right? Like I said, life leads you to different things. So when the 2011 GE came, I decided to help Jeanette Chong Aroldos, who was running for Mountbatten SMC, NSP. I was not a party member. And then eventually I joined as a volunteer. Eventually I became one of her campaign managers. And after the election, she did fairly well, scored about 40%. And she asked if I would stay on to help her. And that's how I became a member of NSP, right? I had no aspirations to run for political office, to run in an election. And so when she decided to leave NSP for different reasons, she decided to contest for the position of president. In NSP, the highest office holder is the president, not the Secretary General. So she needed allies, and she asked if I would contest for the position of Secretary General. And I said, yeah, sure, because I'm always very clear in my role. My role was to support this woman, who I think is a remarkable woman. I want her to succeed. I think it'll make a difference in society if she succeeds. And so I went along with her. And when she decided to leave NSP, I had no more role in NSP. And she went on to SPP. And since my role was to support Singapore People's Party, Mr. Cham's party, I was the one who suggested that she move to Singapore People's Party because I know the Chams from working in DOC.
So you went on to stand for the election in the SPP ticket.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And that's where you contested against Dr. Amy Kaur.
Yes.
Now, and you lost. And soon after that, you moved on to PSP.
PSP.
Now, why did you abruptly leave PSP?
I will tell you why.
Yeah.
Contesting in 2015 GE, I realized that SPP is a vehicle for Mr. Cham to be elected over and over again. It was very difficult to build an organization from that vehicle. And so after contesting at 2015 GE, my friends and I who helped us, by the way, I contested almost as an independent candidate, right? In the sense that I got my own volunteers, raised my own funds. Of course, Mr. and Mrs. Cham came for my rally. They supported my rally, but that's about the only help they did, right? So it's basically taking the SPP logo, putting it there, putting my face there, and telling people to vote for it. In essence, I was an independent candidate, right? So, but after the election, my friends and I, especially those who helped me, felt that we should start our own political party. So we went around writing constitutions, meeting people, and so on and so forth. And as part of the consultation process, I met Inderjit Singh. This was maybe 2019. So Inderjit heard me out, and then he said, looks good, but did you know that Cheng Bok is starting another political party? You know, the values that he speaks about seems like the values that you are speaking about. I said, no, I didn't know. But I knew Cheng Bok because I was with in TOC in 2011 when he contested the
The
presidential
online
election.
citizen.
The online citizen.
Yeah.
You are a moderator
Yeah.
at the presidential election.
Right.
So I reached out to him. He met with my guys. And at that meeting, we realized that we were talking about the same things: openness, transparency.
There was an
independence.
alignment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving forward, the big question is, why did you abruptly leave PSP
Well, we are.
in the 2020 election?
Yeah, it was weeks before the 2020 election, 3 weeks before
Yes.
2020. In the scheme of things, right, I wasn't with the PSP for a very long time.
Yeah.
Maybe just slightly over a year. We all went in to support him. The 15 of us went in to support the PSP without expecting anything in return. But we realized that it's tough. It was tough for us because Doc is a wonderful man. He's a grandfather, right? I mean, when you see him, you can't fault him, right? But he has been a PAP MP for 26 years. 26 years. So the people who are with him, the trusted people, they come with a certain mindset of doing things and all that. And so it was tough, because we come from a different ecosystem, right? I always say that. I always say that I've not shifted away from the Android ecosystem, not moved to the Apple ecosystem. So we come from a different ecosystem. Right? And we felt that we were against a certain kind of what we felt was dictatorship. And then with the PSP, it was tough for us to maneuver, but it was nothing acrimonious in that sense. It was just very difficult.
So culturally, there was no no alignment.
That's right.
So you left.
Yes.
It was quite abrupt, and people who were observing the politics of the day were quite surprised by the move. And I think you left together with Michelle.
Michelle left before me.
Okay. So then you competed in you formed Red Dot United. Very quickly you formed it, and you contested in the election, and you contested in Jurong GRC. Now that brings me to my second question, which is, you seem to have the knack of competing with the bigwigs. First, I mean, not so. I mean, Amy Khor.
Right.
You got 25
formidable opponent.
Formidable opponent,
yes.
But 25% of the votes. Right. Most people, when they get 25% of the votes, they actually walk out. Right. You persisted in 2020 against the biggest wig. I mean, Jurong GRC with Tharman Shanmugaratnam had been the highest scorer. Right. You went and competed with them. But not bad. You got 25%. Most people get zero.
We did better than the 2020 people who contested.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
even if it's a small credit.
But the point is, you got 25%. Most people would have walked away, right? But you carried on, and in this election, 2025, you are taking on another bigwig, K. Shanmugam, in Nisun GRC.
Right.
And he's been in an entrenched position in Nisun, Chongpang, and so on. But you're going in there, literally into the lion's den. What's wrong with you? I mean, there's so many other parties, so many other people you can contest with. Why do you have this obsession with fighting the lions?
I think as a leader, you have to set an example. In this election...
but a leader setting an example and getting mauled in the process, that's a different story, isn't it?
I think in this election, I had an option. And some of them, my own election committee was trying to convince me, why don't you go to Jurong Central SMC? Because we have worked in Jurong, we have put in a lot of work in Jurong Central. And some others were convincing me to go to try some other constituencies. But for me, it's always the teamwork, right? What does the stats tell you? What does the demography tell you? How can I lead the team? So when we did all this math, the math seems to make sense that I should go to Yishun, because the message that I drive in Yishun will affect the rest of the campaign that is happening elsewhere. So that's the reason why I went to Yishun. And Shanmugam is I would like to think, is my friend. I've known him for a very long time. So
not when it comes to politics.
Oh, Yeah,
That's being
agree.
naive,
Yeah,
Ravi?
yeah. No, I don't expect him to cut me any slack or
Yeah.
give me face or whatever. I know he will come hard. I want him to come hard. I will be hard, but it'll be on issues, never on personality,
Yeah,
never
I
on whatever.
understand. But politically, when you make your calculations, in my mind, it doesn't add up. Why are you going against someone who's a bigwig?
It doesn't add up to many people's
Many people,
mind.
right?
You're not the first one to
Yeah.
tell me that it doesn't
Yeah, it
add
doesn't
up.
add up.
Yeah.
Which is why I can't help feeling that there's something larger. Okay, there's something larger, and I'll tell you very honestly what I think it is. I think you've got a calling, or you believe you do. If I'm not mistaken, you were a pastor in a church
Yes, I
before,
was.
the Pentecostal mission,
Right.
and you were ordained.
Yes.
And there are accounts where you have openly said that you have had conversations with the Almighty,
Right.
right? I don't want this to become
Sure.
a discourse on religion or
Sure.
faith, but is there something beyond the logic of politics that is driving you?
I think what I want is a fairer society. I think it's justice and mercy which moves me along. I think we can be less of a transactional society. We can be more of a relational society. And my faith moves and maneuvers me towards that. And I think when we are a transactional society, family suffers, friendship suffers, relationship suffers. And being a father of two children and a grandfather, I mean, this is the Singapore that my children will live in, my grandchildren will live in long after I am gone. So, this is the little bit that I feel that I can do. And of course, my faith motivates me, it pushes me. In the Bible, there are lots of stories like that. Gideon and the 300 men,
Yeah.
David and Goliath, David and Saul, the king who was trying to kill him 40
So all
years.
this, you draw inspiration
Yeah.
from this, right? Has religion come in the way of you driving a political party? And I'm talking about the practical aspects
Right.
of decision making.
I'm a very pragmatic person. I believe that only in a secular state can all faiths or non-faiths be protected. I'm very clear in my thinking. I'm very happy to talk about my faith because it comes from a personal experience perspective. I don't try to force down what I believe on somebody. I think everyone should be able to believe what he wants to believe or what he does not want to believe.
And that doesn't come in your way.
No, it doesn't.
Right. Now, all this points to, for me, it points to something. I've known you for several years.
Several years, more than a decade.
Yeah, more than a decade. And what struck me about you is that you've always been values driven. Sometimes to a fault. Because you don't strike me as someone who's practical enough.
Right.
I'm when I wear those lens, Now, let's look at Jalan Kayu,
Right.
where Ng Chee Meng is competing. Your party was contesting there.
Right.
One of your lieutenants
Yes.
was actually there on the ground.
Right.
And then you made a decision a few days ago, before nomination day,
Right.
to pull out.
Yes.
Now, was that driven by your values and therefore your message from God or whatever? Because it really need not have come from a pure political decision.
Yeah, I mean, I am very clear about this. That for us, it's never, I mean, of course, the party is important, it's an organization, but it's always about the people. And I think in this GE, it's very important not to have three-cornered fights. And in this particular constituency, especially, there are a lot of issues which need to be discussed. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't want Ng Chee Meng to win or lose. That's another question altogether. But they're important issues. Have workers' salaries improved in the last? Workers' lot has it improved in the last 5 years?
Because he was NTUC Secretary General.
Exactly. And the sale or the proposed sale of NTUC income to Allianz. So the important issues which needed to be discussed, and we wanted to and I think Ng has not properly accounted for all these things in the 5 years that he was the NTUC chief. So that was the reason why we decided we will give Jalan Kayu a contest. We didn't know that any other party was walking the ground. I think we, at that point in time, or for at least a month, we were the only party walking the ground. But at some point, we started discussing with the Workers' Party leadership, and they expressed interest in going to Jalan Kayu. And when we had a firm, yes, we are going to Jalan Kayu, we said that we talked about it, and we had spent some money. In the scheme of things, it's small money, but it's not a small money.
No, but it's more the time.
Yeah.
If you ask me.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm curious about. You lead a party. Workers' Party is another party. You have as much right as Workers' Party to compete there.
Right.
Why is it that you gave way and not Workers' Party give way?
I think it's about fair representation, right? Who can represent the people in Jalan Kayu better if elected? The Workers' Party, they are in Parliament. They have managed town council. They have better resources for the residents of Jalan Kayu. These are the facts on the table. Nobody can run away from it. So you said that I'm not a practical or pragmatic person. I am. This shows that I'm a practical and pragmatic person.
But still values driven.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
So,
because you have said several times,
right,
it's what's in the interests of the citizens.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That doesn't make you a very, very, very strong party leader, But we'll talk about that another time. Now, why is it so difficult for the opposition parties to come together? Now, this has been something that many Singaporeans are scratching their heads and say, look, if all the opposition parties come together and form an alliance of sorts, that would be an interesting way, perhaps even a more effective way of competing with the incumbent.
I think it'll be a very scary thought for many Singaporeans, because Singaporeans from us walking the ground, we know that most people do not want a non-PAP government. That's a fact on the ground.
Do you want a non-PAP government?
Oh, I'm not anti-PAP. I don't take an adversarial stance in politics.
The truth of the matter is there's no other party at this point in time that can form the government.
Yeah,
and if you don't have the PAP clearly, resoundingly winning the election to form the government that is not as strong as it used to be, the signals can actually be very damaging to Singapore and Singaporeans.
Well, we don't know that, right? Because we haven't seen something like that happen. I'm sure that the PAP will win with a majority, but it's a super majority. Is it in the interest of the people? So that's always a question I ask myself, right?
So your concern is more, you still want the PAP, and like most Singaporeans, in fact, there's no choice.
Right.
It's even the Workers' Party, which is the largest of the alternate parties, has already said that they are not.
Yes.
In fact, they competed only in about 30 seats or less. Now, so it's really about denying the ruling party, right, the super majority, which is 2/3.
We don't want a monopoly, right? Because there is no unity in monopoly. If you look at Grab, at one point in time, I'm old enough to remember. I think you are old enough to remember as well. Grab was giving the best deals, right? You can go out there, you can get the lowest cost, fastest ride, and every time I know some of my friends, they gave up their cars so just they can ride on Grab. But today is Grab the cheapest ride. So I can bring that same analogy to this, right? I think it's never in anyone's interest to give anybody a monopoly. And I think all powers need to be challenged, because power never concedes until it's challenged.
What's the advantage of challenging? If I were to wear the PAP hat, for example, I would say, Our job is to rule the country as efficiently and effectively as possible. And so having too many debates on bills that need to be passed fast so that we can actually act in the best interest of the people fast, right? That's the argument.
I think it's very dangerous, right? Because if you look at sea lanes, the PAP is like an aircraft carrier, but then the aircraft carrier alone cannot protect that seaway. It needs frigates, it needs smaller boats to make sure that pirates are at bay.
So it's a carrier group.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, what the PAP is doing is we are the king of this space. No one else got space. See, it's not in the best interest of... I think it's not in the best...
In practical terms, can you explain what could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong so seriously if they're not given absolute power?
When you ignore voices, society starts to fragment. And that's very dangerous.
And why do you feel that the PAP ignores voices?
I think it's very difficult for them to hear all voices because they are a big machinery. They run in a certain way. And when they run in a certain way, it's very difficult to listen to the small voices, but sometimes the small voices are very, very important because they point you to a direction, right? I think as a nation, we are losing the soul because we are so transactional. And I think every nation needs a soul. And you constantly need to remind that, hey, I think you're going off mark here. So I think that's a role that RDU can play in a society like Singapore.
Well, the PAP still does believe, and I think they're sincere about it, they do believe that they have a sense of the pulse on the ground.
I'm sure they do. I mean, they've got the largest grassroots network, right?
So why do you feel, I'm still trying to understand why you and some other alternative parties feel that the PAP has lost touch.
Well, because the grassroots is beholden, right? A lot of it, I know that without the vitamin M's, I call them the money, manpower, and the ability to mobilize, it is very difficult to run any organization. I think many of the grassroots are motivated by altruistic reasons, but the fact is, when you're a grassroots leader, and if you're a businessman, there are certain implications. How for example, let's put it this way: when you have,
are you talking about conflict of interest?
No, let me put it this way: when I have an MP I've worked most of my life in the social service organization. When you have an MP who is the patron of the organization, and when you are hearing feedback from your clients, how much of a feedback you will give to the MP, because you are also in the context of Singapore, any social service organization you cannot run if you don't have funding from the government. See, so there is, like you said, conflicts of interest. Of course there is, but I don't know. No, so.
Yeah, but
I mean, these are bigger questions.
Bigger questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on from here and talk about. To tell you the truth, going back to the issue of why the alternative parties can't collaborate and cooperate a lot more. There are examples beyond your party. NSP, for example, pulled out of contesting in Sembawang West, right? For the same reason, to allow Chee Soon Juan from SDP to have a straight fight with the incumbent in Poli San, in Sembawang West. Now, what do you think are the chances of that contest?
I think nobody goes into a contest to lose. So I've got the highest regards for Dr. Chee. I tell you why. I mean, you and I come from about the same generation. And sometimes we are fed by the mainstream media, and our opinions are fed by the mainstream media. When I came back from the US, I attended one candlelight vigil in the speaker's corner where Dr. Chee was going to speak. I went to see what's happening. But after the event, I went to talk to Dr. Chi, and I was pleasantly surprised that he didn't talk to me about his activism or his politics. He talked to me about the faith that we both had in common. And I was like, wow, this is not the, it's normal. He's not, it's really normal, not the kind of megalomaniac that the papers made him out to be. And so that's where my conversation with him started.
You actually you're quoted saying, he's a guiding light to many in the opposition ecosystem. That's a very, very high praise.
I think so, because
Guiding light.
I think no one else besides JBJ has been so persecuted like Chee Soon-juan. That's a fact, right? And I mean, earlier you asked me this question. You lost to Amy Khor, you lost to Tharman. What keeps you going? I mean, these are our guiding lights. When I look at JBJ, when he started contesting in the 1970s until he won in 1981, there were some elections where he was scoring in the 20s.
Yeah.
He kept the fight going because he saw that having opposition voice in parliament was important. It was in the best interest of Singapore.
And the 91 by-election was a breakthrough.
Yes.
And what you're saying is, before that, he could have also given up, like I was suggesting to you.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point, I must admit.
So,
persistence.
Yes. So I think the same goes for Dr. Chi, right? I mean, people of an entire generation looked at him in a certain manner because of how he was characterized. But he persevered. And because he persevered, the last election, he got almost 45%. Yeah. So I think the opposition terrain in Singapore is not conducive. When you climb a mountain, you know that there's a smooth side and a rough side, right? I mean, I think Pritam spoke about it recently, Pritam saying. And for the opposition, I agree with him, it's always a rough side. You get scraps, you get cuts. But if you give up, who suffers? There's a price to pay, of course.
But the challenge that Chee Soon-juan would face is that he's not known, he's not familiar with this is new area. Because Bukit Batok, which is where he contested in the past two elections, right? He's a familiar face.
Right.
And the margins narrowed between 2015 and 2020. His vote count increased significantly. But here, he's a new area, and he's up against someone, Poli San, who knows the ground very well.
I think that's where the brand of Chee Soon-juan helps. See, because Chee Soon-juan is not only a person, right? He's also a brand. He stands for some things, some ideals, some principles, and I think that would help him a lot. And that's what I'm trying to build RDU to be. I am very careful that I'm building a brand. And what do we stand for? That to me is very, very important. So, I mean, when I say that Chee Soon-juan is a guiding light, it means that I see all these things in him. And when I talk about JBJ, I see all these qualities in him. And when I talk about Chiam See Tong, I see all these qualities in him. He has persevered, and how he had tried to be non-adversarial in the kind of politics that he brought to the table.
And non-combative.
Right.
So let me move on to talk about your manifesto, your party manifesto, right? What struck me is what you said in the introduction. It's time for a new social contract. We're all familiar with the social contract between the people and the PAP government from the 1960s, right? And they have delivered.
I'll tell you why. Because I'm worried.
And you talked about two words, dignity and pride.
Yeah.
Could you explain why these words?
Dignity and fairness, because I think I have worked and lived in the US, and I know who gets vouchers. It is those that are poor and really need help. They stand in the grocery line and they get food stamps. And I wonder if voucher schemes, is reducing Singaporeans to that. That's a real worry for me. And when I look at the rhetoric that's coming out, I mean, even in PM Lawrence Wong's ward, he's giving away $1 rations. And I think a few days ago, I read in the papers there was long queue and they couldn't give out probably not in Lawrence's ward, but in another ward. They couldn't finish giving out all the vouchers and the coupons and or whatnot. So it makes me worry. In the past, we could aspire, or in Mr. Goh Chok Tong, our second Prime Minister's words, it's not probably not the best ideal, but at least there's some tangible for you to aspire to, right? Cars, credit card, condominium, something for you to aspire to. Today, what are we aspiring towards? Cash handouts, CPF top-ups, charge cards, rebates. So I think it makes us very dependent, and I'm not sure if that's good for
You're talking specifically about vouchers, right? Now, two things that you brought up several recommendations. Two things. One is unconditional cash transfer for citizens.
It's not. It's not a radical.
But that's a kind of handout as well.
No, it's not a radical idea. It's a system reboot, right? Because when you look at our shadow budget, we speak about it. We speak about modest tax reforms, wealth taxes, corporate tax increases, very modest tax reforms where we don't touch the reserve, don't drain the reserves. I'm very particular in this. I think because I come from a certain generation, we think that the reserves are important for a rainy day. It serves a purpose. So I'm very particular about this. But I think a system reboot is important. And even Dharman talked about it. He said that in the next 10 years, 1.2 billion new workers are coming in, but there are only 400,000 jobs available. That's a serious problem. So it would mean it's already happening. A few days ago, someone working in the Ministry of Health, he called me and he said that he was let go when his contract ended. What would he do? He's a 40-some-year-old man. He has got to freelance, drive Grab. Is that the kind of society we want? I think the unconditional cash transfer will give a Singaporean a certain confidence, that he can take this on.
Well, I guess the standard response, and I must admit, it also came to my mind, is how are you going to pay for these things?
I think there's a surplus, right? Every year, Singaporean pay. If you do the math, it's about
We're talking about budget surplus.
Yeah, budget surplus. So if you do the math proposal, the pilot that we're talking about will come to about $1.3 to $1.5 billion. I am paraphrasing. We have the actual numbers in the shadow budget, but it's less than 1.5 billion. With a $6.6 billion, even if you set aside $1 billion, there is still a surplus of $5 billion.
Okay. Civil freedom. You talked about in the manifesto. You talked about the importance of the Freedom of Information Act. Why is that so important?
I think it's we're living in a knowledge-based economy. They're talking in a broader sense of things, right? And I think laws like we have a lot of data out there, much more than in the past years. I don't disagree with that, but I think we need more raw data so that citizens can interpret and decide how they want to use the data, what kind of a story it tells. I think data tells a story. One example I can give you is, I think, was it the Kranji or the Woodlands forest that was cleared? And who blew the whistle on it is someone who saw it on the satellite, right? It was cut bigger than the area that they were supposed to take off, And I think that whistleblowing would not have happened if that person did not have access to the satellite data. So I think we need more raw data. So as citizens, we can be more involved in decision making. At the end of the day, that's what I stand. What I believe in, that's what I stand for. You have known me for several years. You know that I'm consistent in this. I don't just pluck this out of thin air. This is something I'm consistent about. I think I want citizens to have more power, more say in the decisions that the society makes. And we have important topics coming up. Lawrence has said that nuclear is an option that we have to study.
Yeah.
We have to study. I don't disagree, but give us more data so that as a nation we can decide.
Okay. So Ravi, we have come to the last part of the interview, and it's probably the most important part of the interview. The common refrain we are hearing from the ruling party as well as others in society is that the opposition parties aren't able to attract people of caliber. We hear that again and again. Political observers have made that comment even in this election. Now, the reason why they're saying that, if you ask me, is that society has come to define caliber very much in terms of academic prowess, in terms of professional abilities, in chosen professions which have a tick in the box, so to speak, and so on, right? Now, if you look at it from that perspective, and I'm not just talking about the elite, I'm talking about people in general, right, have that orientation. If you take that perspective, your team competing in NISUN, GRC, pales in comparison in terms of quality to the team led by Minister K. Shanmugam.
Oh, I'm not too sure about that. We have two doctors, two PhD doctors there. Of course, a captain of industry there. And of course, but let's not talk about qualifications.
But that's the point I'm making.
Yeah. So
the orientation that it's not just at the top.
So we have fielded candidates who are, for example, a national artist like Ben Pua, as an example, right? Why did we field him? We know that, he's told us before that he has failed English in secondary school.
Yeah.
But what is
success? Ben Pua is fielded in Jurong East, Bukit Batok URC.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, he's fielded there, and we have others there, like, for example, Liana. She was once homeless. She has made something of herself now. So I think what is success? That's very important, right? I think people always work in their best interest. People always do things in their best interest. And that's where I think it's important to see. I think the ruling party or those that govern the country, they're very elitist. And if people always take care of their own interests, it means the elites will always take care of their own interests, which is why you need to get the ordinary people involved in this process, in this political process. Because success is also about failing and failing and failing again, but still keep persevering so that you can come up in life.
Okay. So that our audience has a better grasp of this, I want to show you something, a video clip that I got in my phone. Okay. Ravi, this is a video clip of Ben Pua that you were talking about. And this has gone viral, I'd like us to watch this.
Sure. Sure.
I have never spoken publicly about this, but I failed English in my O-levels. At that point, I felt like the world had closed its door. But I refused to believe that a single exam could define me. So when I hear people well into adulthood still talking about how badly they did in PSLE or how they ended up in normal technical stream, as though that's still the main story of their life, I get concerned. Because if you have already made it and you are still stuck on your score from age 12, what message does that send to the hundreds of thousands who didn't and haven't yet? Many of them still carry that shame. They struggle with self-worth. They have been told they are less than for so long. They start to believe it. I believe in a Singapore where no child grows up thinking they are not good enough, where no adult carries the weight of a number that was stamped on them when they were barely a teenager. We are more than our test scores. We are more than our streams. And the Singapore we build must be one where everyone, no matter how they started, has the chance to rise.
That's really powerful.
Yes, it is.
I'd like us to end by talking about this. Do you think that Singaporeans are ready to vote for a Ben Pua, who is not your typical MP caliber. Let's face it. He's got some speech defect. He doesn't have academic credentials. Do you think Singaporeans are ready for this?
I think, for me, I never get into a contest unless I play to win. I play to win. I'm a sportsman. When I was in secondary school, I've never said this in any interview before. In my last year, when I was in Sec 4, I got nominated to be the Sportsman of the Year. I got 3 gold medals straight. So being a sportsman, I know that I play to win. Whether you win or not, that's another matter altogether. But I think this is a battle, if for the lack of better word, that I have to be involved in, because society is conditioned in a certain manner, and sometimes reconditioning is important. A person like Ben Pua is very, very important to help society to rethink who we are as a society. And so what is win? I think if you're asking me if we can win the election, I would say that I would never get into a contest if I didn't think that I had a chance. But more than that, that's a small win. The bigger win is if we can change society incrementally for it to be more soulful, less transactional, and more relational. You and I come from a generation where we lived in kampongs. I've been to some of your talks, and you know how relational that is. Doors are open. You can walk into people's house. They will give you something to eat, regardless of if you are their child or not. So that's, for me, I lived in a generation where Channel 8 telecasts Tamil programs at 9 or 10 p.m. And before that, it was the Mandarin program. I grew up waiting for Man in the Net, Chow Yun-fat's first series, And so for me, I think that was a relational society that we need to move back to. We don't need to become a kampong. That's not what I'm saying.
It's not possible.
It's not possible. But we need to be more human to one another.
Well, Ravi, what I'm taking away from this discourse, this conversation, this chat, is it's not all about winning in a general election.
Yes.
Thank you for the reminder, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.